It's time to talk about the Kickin Chickn. It's Blaziken. Per the usual with these videos, we'll be looking at Blaziken's history within the mainline TCG. We're going to be talking playability, aesthetics, and overall flavor. Full disclosure, I don't like Blaziken as a Pokemon. I'll talk more about that at the end of the video, but let's go ahead and jump into the TCG representation of this Pokemon. Boy howdy, are we starting with a banger here, the Fire Starter Blaziken from EX Ruby and Sapphire. Firestarter really is the main event here. It's a Pokepower that allows you to attach a Fire Energy card from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon once per turn. Not to suggest that Fire Stream isn't a great attack. 50 damage for 3 is already solid, but you can also discard a Fire Energy attached to Blaziken and deal 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. The main issue is that Blaziken cannot accelerate Fire Energy onto itself. It can only be to a benched Pokemon. So instead, you just surround Blaziken with a bunch of other big fire types, including other Blaziken. Firestarter Blaziken famously paired with Delcatty to form one of the most powerful synergies in the Ruby and Sapphire era. Energy Draw allowed you to pitch a Fire Energy from your hand and then use Firestarter to accelerate that same Fire Energy onto a benched Pokemon. You could pair this with Oracle to essentially draw any 2 cards you want from your deck at will. Or you could power the engine even further by including Team Aqua's Manectric, which would allow you to flick a Fire Energy back over to an active Blaziken after you attach it to a benched Manectric. And full power mode is including Blaziken EX from Team Magma versus Team Aqua, because this thing could snipe for 100 damage off of Volcanic Ash. Yes, 4 energy is a lot of energy, but when you're accelerating in a deck, you can refill those very quickly. Between Firestarter, Blaziken, Delcatty, and Team Aqua's Manectric, you could easily recycle and move around Fire Energy to refill a Volcanic Ash the turn after you use it. You're discarding 2 Fire Energy that you could immediately get back. If not that turn, then definitely the next. You may have already noticed that I didn't talk about the other Blaziken from Ruby and Sapphire, and that's because there's not a whole lot to talk about, especially when compared to its Firestarter counterpart. Somewhere in the mix, we've also skipped over the Japanese exclusive VS Blaziken that was included in the Destiny Deoxys promotional deck. This is Raf's Blaziken? I don't remember if that's how his name's pronounced. Please correct me in the comments. It's really not that bad for a basic Pokemon. 1 energy deals 10 damage, 3 energy, 30 plus. It's honestly like a Fire-type version of base set Electabuzz, which was a great card. Pop Series 1 Blaziken is also a Haymaker card in its own way, a little bit more on the energy cost, but you get more bang for your buck. Nothing too special to write home about, but it is an interesting inclusion. We now turn over to the Blaziken from EX Emerald, which is designed to be a comeback Pokemon through and through. Its Pokebody Blaze allows it to deal 40 more damage from attacks whenever its HP is 40 or less. For 1 energy, you can ping your opponent and burn them, and then with 3 energy, you can do damage burn, which is going to deal 50 damage, 70 damage if there's already damage counters on the defending Pokemon. So if you are below 40 HP, and you damage burn a Pokemon that already has damage counters on it, you're actually dealing 110 to your opponent. That is a lot of conditions to meet, but when you're running a Blaziken deck, you might want to just include one of these as that key comeback card so that once all these conditions are met, you can just get it into play and sweep. In Haul-On Phantoms, we got another one of these Haymaker style Blazikens, which I do love when Stage 2 Pokemon are given 1 energy attacks because it encourages you to play a faster version of the deck. Instead of just attaching a Fire Energy to a Torchic, attacking and passing turn, dealing 10 damage or something. No, attach a Fire Energy Rare Candy into Blaziken and deal 30 damage instead. Still not an incredible card considering the rest of the format that it was printed in, but I do like when they take Blaziken cards in this direction. Crystal Guardians gave us another Blaziken EX, and to this day, this is the only fighting type Blaziken card ever printed. Also notably, aside from Blaziken absolutely raving in that artwork, is this card has a lot of text on it for a Pokemon card. Drag Off allows you the option of gusting out one of your opponent's bench Pokemon before dealing that 30 damage. Nothing too special there, Drag Off doing Drag Off things, but Burn Away is the one reason I want to talk about this card, and not in a good way. For 4 energy, 2 of which are different specific energy types, you're only dealing 100 damage. So I'm already not on board, but essentially what Burn Away does is it does trample damage to yourself. So any excess damage dealt to the defending Pokemon, you receive in recoil damage. Say the defending Pokemon has 50 HP left and you hit it with Burn Away, you deal 50 damage to yourself because you dealt excess damage. It punishes you for dealing more damage, which is not what you want from a fighting type card. Even for a Pokemon with 150 HP, this is still an EX and you're bringing yourself closer to being knocked out. So your opponent can take an extra prize card? No. Nuh-uh. Get this card away from me. Well, what have we here? Looks like somebody was looking for a reprint. Firestarter Blaziken popping up in Power Keepers, and it won't be the last time it's reprinted. And look who else got reprinted in Power Keepers, our old friend Delcatty. The synergistic pair are back, except this time, instead of being the core of an S tier deck, they're the core of a B or C tier deck, which is a prime example of how fast deck building really accelerated and ramped up during the EX era, that by the time that Blaziken and Delcatty were reprinted, they had already been power crept by all of the amazing trainers and supporters in the block, to the point that Pokemon synergies didn't really matter anymore because your trainer engines were so powerful you didn't need to rely on Pokemon powers and bodies anymore. In fact, when Diamond and Pearl base set dropped, Blaziken was booted from this deck entirely because a better option was available. 90 damage for 2 fire energy? Yeah, Blaziken can't compete with that. As soon as this Infernape dropped, people were already used to the rogue Firestarter decks popping up at locals, but as soon as this Infernape dropped, people just went like, yep, swap that Blaziken out for an Infernape, and it's what all the players in the community called the Captain Obvious deck. Between Delcatty, Infernape, and Delcatty EX, you could just hit hard turn over turn, and it really just made Blaziken look bad and wish it was never reprinted in the first place. As happens with most starter Pokemon in the TCG, once the new set of starters is out, the older ones have to take a back seat for a while and just get mediocre cards. For the Diamond and Pearl era, Monkey is in, Chicken is out, and we get this Blaziken here from Great Encounters. It's not bad. It can accelerate fire energy onto itself or another Pokemon and then snipe for 80 damage. Not bad by any means, but it's more of a starter deck Pokemon. Same could be said for the Platinum Blaziken. It did have some synergy with itself. You could use Fire Breath to burn the opposing Pokemon and then use Clutch to lock it in place so that they're having to flip that coin for burn between turns. And then depending on the level of threat you're looking at across the table, you could either keep the defending Pokemon locked in place while you power up something else on your bench, or just go ahead and knock it out with a Fire Spin follow-up. It's a nice little precursor for what comes next, which is the Frontier Brain Blaziken and the subsequent Frontier Brain Blaziken level X. First off, we have a Blaziken with 80 HP, which is a basic Pokemon. For 1 energy, you can use Luring Flame to gust out one of your opponent's benched Pokemon and burn it. Next turn, you evolve up into Blaziken FB level X, and for just 1 extra energy, deal 80 damage to your opponent's defending Pokemon. If that Pokemon is still burned, you're dealing 120. A pretty good 1-2 punch that made Blaziken FB level X a staple in a lot of lock decks, which sought to lock your opponent's defending Pokemon in the active position and either punished it while it was stuck there or whittled away at your opponent's bench while they were trying to set up something else. The best version of this deck usually paired with Garchomp C level X, just because it was the best card in format. You could pair it with any SP Pokemon and the deck would get better, so why not stick it with a Blaziken? That way, if you're locking an opponent's active in the active position, you can do exactly what I said. You can torture it with Blaziken level X, or you can just strand it in the active position while Garchomp starts wailing on the benched Pokemon. Not to mention the Garchomp C level X does help cover Blaziken in that after you use Jet Shoot, follow-up damage is increased when it's done to Blaziken, so once you take a big chunk of damage from your opponent as a follow-up to Jet Shoot, you can just drop a Garchomp C level X and heal all the damage off of that Blaziken, so it never mattered anyway. Dark Explorer's Blaziken is pretty bland, but I do like the artistic choices they took here. The Furious Fist Blaziken does jump back onto that bench hate wagon, as Clutch can lock your opponent's active in place, also dealing 50 damage to it for 2 colorless energy. That's worth note by itself, but also you can Burning Shot once you get some more energy onto this thing for 150 damage. Sniping. Feels like this card was really just built to hate on Megas. You know, this high HP Pokemon, your opponent retreats it to the bench so you can get something else in the active, and you just go, nope, I'm killing that thing. It's a little too slow to really see a lot of play, but still interesting. Primal Clash is another example of just total power creep to where I'm looking at a stage 2 that can deal 100 damage for 2 energy, and I'm still just like, yep, that's not good enough. You gotta go way heavier than that, brother. Toss this thing back in the starter deck. We certainly can't leave the X and Y block without talking about the atrocious CGEX cards they release, which Blaziken did get one, and the nigh unusable megas that usually accompanied them. Like, I was just talking about a Blaziken that wasn't up to snuff because it was dealing 100 damage for 2 energy, and then here we have a mega, what is essentially a stage 1 Pokemon that's dealing 100 damage for 4 energy, and yeah, next turn it's going to deal 200, which is better, but good luck keeping it in the active position, because if that thing gets shot back to the bench, that effect is going away and you've wasted a whole lot of energy, which if you're running these cards in your deck, you're already wasting energy. So goodbye EXs and Megas of the X and Y era, and hello GXs from Sun and Moon. At least this time you are getting a guaranteed 210 damage off of 3 energy, which isn't bad, even if you are having to discard 2. And then you get a super energy removal for 1 energy as your GX attack. As GX attacks go, this is a little underpowered, but this is the best Blaziken we've really seen since the Frontier Brain one. I told you we would see it again, and here it is. Firestarter Blaziken got reprinted again in Dragon Majesty. At this point, that Firestarter ability is just in the game to teach new players about how Poke Powers and now abilities work. It's included in a Lost Thunder precon, so at the very least it was fun to see it in print again, to see it in play again as people were playing with those precons, and to see it powered up a little bit. You'll notice subtle differences in the HP, in the fire stream damage output, and even the spread output. Darkness Ablaze Blaziken has the double type ability, which I don't really know why this is an ability and why it can't just be part of the card, but okay, yeah, it can technically hit for fighting weakness. As of recording this video, Blaziken V from Chilling Reign is the most recently printed Blaziken, and it's okay. It's definitely a stepping stone into Blaziken VMAX, but I gotta say, I do really dig the Trainer Gallery artwork there with May. I'm a huge fan of Trainer Gallery, and this one flows really well into the Trainer Gallery art for the VMAX. A fine example of where the TCG explores some stuff that the games don't really get into, which is the type of fun shenanigans that can happen with VMAX Pokemon. Just your partner Pokemon suddenly being enormous. The card itself is pretty solid. I love seeing the clutch attack coming back, and the ability to deal damage and accelerate energy to the bench for low energy cost. So this isn't going to be the main attacker in your deck, but it's going to be a good attacker that's also going to help you get set up for the rest of the game. Some key issues are the fact that other VMAXs just did more or went bigger, and the fact that this card is weak to water. You have Origin Form Palkia running around, and then later Chin Pao. It's hard to get away from water decks in any format. I promised earlier in the video I would explain my dislike for Blaziken, and I think this card in particular is a good place to do that, because I hate the artwork on this card. I hate it. I actually like the artist. I like the art style. I just hate this overall card because it does not read well. Is the Gigantamax Blaziken giving, like, kung fu lessons to the Inteleon line that's on top of the tower? Or is the Inteleon line doing like a little hold up, like pointing their finger guns at the Blaziken, and it's like, oh no! And this does tie into why I don't like Blaziken and why I don't like a lot of Gen 3 designs. I'm going to make a whole video on it at some point, but they're generally flat. They're nowhere near as expressive or interpretive as Gen 1 and 2. Is Blaziken angry? Is it serene? Is it scared? No idea. I was too young to express it at the time or really acknowledge what was going on, but when I first saw Blaziken, I just went, I hate that. That doesn't look like a Pokemon, and that's because I was a Gen 1er. I started with OG Pokemon. I got used to those Ken Sugimori designs. I understand that different animals from different regions have different kind of styles to how they're put together and built, and that they can be different, but Blaziken was a Digimon. When I looked at it in the player's guide and saw that the Torchic evolved into Combusken into Blaziken, I went, that's just a Digimon. The franchise has gone on to design plenty more Pokemon that I look at and I'm just like, that doesn't seem to fit in the landscape of Pokemon, that's more like a Digimon, or that looks like a Yu-Gi-Oh creature. But Blaziken always stands out to me as the first Pokemon I ever looked at and I was just like, nah, that doesn't fit in. Anyway, Clutch dealing 60 damage and then getting the classic Clutch effect is nice, and I like that part of the card. Ironically, Blaziken VMAX works best when it's not in a fire-type deck. Like if you pair it with Zeraora or something, it works way better in powering up its allies than just trying to do its own thing. And that's Blaziken for you. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite Blaziken cards are. Let me know if I missed any or if I completely flubbed up on how competitively viable one of the cards were. If you like what I'm doing here, make sure you check out some of my other vintage Pokemon TCG content on the channel and do all the YouTube stuff to help the channel grow. Social media links are down in the description, including my Pokemon Go ID. I just started playing Go again. Let's be friends. Just let me know in the comments who you are. See you guys next video. Bye.